The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers Cable or Rogers TV.
Well, hello everybody. Good evening. It's great to be here tonight. I tell you, we're excited. We might have a few glitches, but that's part of the excitement as we're here to have tonight's Saskatoon Mayoral Forum. My name's Lenore Swiston. I'm the host of Civically Speaking, and I'm one of the moderators for this event. And I'm here with my Voice of Saskatoon and Civically Speaking colleagues. We begin by acknowledging that we are on treaty land, referred to as Treaty 6 territory, and that the City of Saskatoon and all the people here are beneficiaries of this treaty. Treaty 6 encompasses the lands of the Cree, Dakota, Nakota, Saulteaux, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. We are dedicated to ensuring that the spirit of reconciliation and Treaty 6 is honored and respected. The acknowledgement also reaffirms our relationship with one another, and we are committed to moving forward in partnership with Indigenous nations in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. So please, colleagues, it's time to introduce ourselves so people know who's going to be asking the questions tonight. So I'm going to hand it over to my colleague here to the right, and we're going to go down the row and then online.
Yeah, so my name is Anika. I have been doing the Voice of Saskatoon for 6 years now, I believe. So Rashid and I, we started that, and yeah, here we are back with another Mayoral Forum. This is our second one, so I'm very excited to see what the candidates have to say. So yeah, thank you everyone. Over to English.
My name is Madhurja, and I'm really proud and very happy to see everyone here. No one sick called, so I'm really happy. And hoping for an exciting session. Off to you, Rashid.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Rashid Ahmed. I'm one of the co-hosts for Voice of Saskatoon and looking forward for the conversation tonight.
Awesome. And then over online.
I'm Christina Chernesky. I'm one of the hosts of Civically Speaking on CFCR. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for the Mayoral Forum 2024. It's my first one here, and I'm excited to hear more from the candidates and also to hear what Saskatoon has to say as well. Back to you.
Yeah, thank you. We're privileged to have each of the four candidates here, actually in the House, live with us tonight to discuss the future of our city. This forum is an opportunity for each of our candidates to share your vision and to respond to some of the pressing issues that are facing Saskatoon today. So welcome to the show. We've got Gordon Wyant, Cynthia Block, Cary Tarasoff, and Don Atchison. I'm going to hand it back to Anika, and she's going to give the audience and you as the candidates an overview of how tonight's going to work.
Yeah, so I would like to give the candidates and audience the overview of the forum. So each of my colleagues will take turns and ask one of the 5 questions we have prepared and shared with each candidate in advance. We have a set time, so we'll have for opening and closing remarks and for the questions. So for opening and closing remarks, we have 2 minutes each, and for questions, we have question answers, we have 3 minutes each. So again, I would request for everyone to be more mindful. We will have the timer going on, so if we go slightly over, then we might not have enough time for the closing remarks. So yeah, just that, and we'll get started with the opening remarks. So you will each have 2 minutes, and the timer is right over there. So I will start with Gordon Wyant.
Well, thank you very much. Well, thank you for organizing it, and thanks everybody for being here, especially my fellow candidates. So why? Why, after stepping down from the legislature, do I want to be the mayor of Saskatoon? And I get asked that on a daily basis. Certainly I can find something less stressful to do with my time, but frankly, I'm quite upset. I'm upset to see our taxes go up with no substantial increase in services. After $14 million in additional revenue sharing from the province last year, more municipal tax revenue flowing into the city of Saskatoon, we saw an almost 12% increase in our taxes last year when you take into account the new garbage levy. And we still, as of today, are going to be reporting a deficit on a quarterly basis. So where's the value? It's not in our core services. It's not citizen focused. Our streets are becoming less safe and our core services are being underfunded. We have the lowest police officer per population of a city over 100,000 in the country, and that's just unacceptable. Our population is growing 12 to 14,000 people a year, and we need safety and security on our streets. By some estimates, our road maintenance budget is in a $250 million deficit. And that's just for what we see. We don't know what the deficit is, the infrastructure deficit for the infrastructure that we can't see. We borrow money for snow removal. We need a mayor and council that the people can trust with their tax dollars. We need to prioritize core services by looking for efficiencies through efficiency audits and with a red tape reduction strategy. Experience counts. I've experienced at the municipal level, at the provincial level, being a cabinet minister for 12 years. I have private practice experience, public practice experience, and I have the experience that we need in this mayor's chair. I've advised through my law office on companies and financial institutions. So I have the experience that the city needs to lead the city forward for the next number of years.
Thank you, Gordon. Over to Cary Tarasoff.
Good evening. Well, I'm a local kid. I grew up between the city and the farm. I was a military officer for a number of years. I went to University of Saskatchewan, trained in geography, urban design, hydrology, climatology. I went off with the military, come back in the summers to farm. And then I ended up getting hurt, so I ended up retraining as a draftsman at NATE in Edmonton. And since then, I've worked in a wide range of things: mining, commercial, institutional, low-income housing, high-income housing, of all types institutional. And in the last decade or so in the city, I've worked in specifically commercial, high-end commercial within the city. And so I have a wealth of knowledge in all different areas that are affecting our city in a big way. And you will find, if you look at my history in the last 4 years, that when you come to finding problems with transit, the animation that caused the audit came from me. If you look at options for rail that nobody wants to talk about, I've got yet another one now. If you look at Montgomery, I have an option for Montgomery, and now it's actually considered as one of the 4 for the city. I have been working hard to find actual solutions, but I also can pick apart what engineering is doing. And I can ask questions. We just had flooding the other day. How many years all the people that have served here have had flooding issues and they've been on council, but they ask the same questions. They get the same answers from administration, and then they go ahead and they pass things through. What we need is somebody who maybe has done stormwater calculations, who understands PC Schwim, who can ask questions a little bit more depth and understand when things is not as complete as it should be. We need value for the money we're spending. We're wasting money in so many areas, and we're wasting money in planning efforts that don't align together. And I'm the person, I believe, technically to bring us together, and I can drive teams to bring us efficiency at the city level. I appreciate this. Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you, Cary. Over to Cynthia Block.
Thanks, and thanks very much for the opportunity. It is a pleasure to be with you here this evening. I grew up on a farm just outside of Saskatoon, and Saskatoon has always been the city. I have had a lifetime love affair with the city, and I am proud that I was able to build a career and raise a family here. I have been involved in volunteering. I have had a background in journalism for many years, doing the news on CTV all through the 90s. And after that, I spent a lot of time working in my own company, doing media and communications for my clients. And I feel that my jump into politics was really an ability for me to give back. And so for the last 8 years, I have been the Ward 6 City Councillor, and I am proud of a lot of the things that we've been able to achieve, even though I know we have some work to do. I want to tell you a little bit about what I care about going forward. I truly want our city to be a place where everyone feels they belong. Whether your ancestors are Indigenous, whether they arrived yesterday, whether they are people of color, whether they have a different orientation or a different gender, everyone belongs here, and this is our home. And we need to feel that. Every one of us needs to feel it. I think we have a lot to be excited about and optimistic. Saskatoon is among Canada's fastest growing cities. We have the fastest growing economy in the province and almost the fastest growing economy in all of Canada. And we are an increasingly global city. And this is all fantastic news, except it also puts a lot of pressures on our city. How to house people, how to move people around, how to make sure that they get access to services. These are really complex issues that previous councils I don't think have had to deal with, certainly not in the same way that we are today. Some almost 30,000 people have arrived in Saskatoon over the last 2 years.
Thank you, Cynthia. Over to Don
I had so much
Atchison.
more to say.
Good evening, everyone. The best mayor for Saskatoon will have experience and good common sense to best serve Saskatoon's issues and politics. I have 22 years of council and mayor experience. I was your mayor for 4 terms already and delivered great results on city's projects and council issues. My common sense approach has been successfully tested. I believe that I'm best suited and have the knowledge and the experience to be your mayor once again. My lifelong passion has always been about Saskatoon's politics, community events, and social development. Saskatoon has been a great city for business, education, cultural events, and family life. Our middle class and working class form the core values of our community. We are becoming more diverse, and we're wanting to be more vibrant every day with healthier businesses and cultural organizations. But the last 8 years have gotten worse, not better. As mayor, I will defend you and your neighborhoods, your businesses, and your future prosperity and policies to stop spending without proper planning. I will be a strong money manager to invest your tax dollars on needs. Yes, needs, not wants. We need to be physically conservative with your money. The election is about getting back to basics so we can put realistic spending, work within our means, and build a budget we can afford. For the 2025 budget, I will not vote for a mill rate increase. We need to get our finances under control. People who are struggling to pay bills should not pay more taxes for risky developments. They don't need them now. The downtown project needs to be put on pause. With strong neighborhoods, strong businesses, better services, a better economy, management, we can create the new prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we only have limited time, but I do thank
That's
you
right.
all for your opening remarks, and I'll pass it over to Rashid for the first question.
Yeah, thank you, Anika. So our first question is about infrastructure and public services. Saskatoon is growing, and with that growth comes increasing demands on our infrastructure and public services. How do you plan to address the city's infrastructure needs while ensuring that essential services like public transit, waste management, and emergency services are not only maintained but also improved to meet the demands of our larger population? So I will start with Cary.
Well, infrastructure in our city already has problems, and all we're doing is offloading a lot of costs back onto the taxpayer as a service fee. Every time people look at things, they start to find out they're paying more and more. We overcharge for water in our city, and then they take profits out of the water utility and they spend it some other place that you're not aware of. These things have to stop. We have to quit taking more money out of the water utility than they actually need to maintain it, which is crazy. We should be preparing for the future, and we should have good plans that make sense. A transit system that was failing a few years ago, I did an animation about, went to City Council, caused an audit because they weren't being honest about what was going on. A BRT system is not a subway on wheels, just like an airplane is not a bus that flies. People should know this. The First Avenue terminal for the BRT, I've proven, will fail the way it's designed. Now it's being looked at as being redesigned. There's too much money being spent by all of these consultants when logic is being not brought into the equation. Now we're having the housing accelerator throw in. We're going to have sewer and water issues across the city. We just had a flood over a 1-inch rainstorm, and we're going to increase our runoff across the city. We should be preparing better. Instead, we have one plan that does one thing over here, one that does another thing over there. We want to take 3 lanes out of First Avenue for driving. We want to take 2 lanes out of 22nd Street. We want to take 2 lanes out of 23rd Street. We want to take 2 lanes out of 2nd Avenue. And we want to take a host of lanes, including merging lanes, out of Idlewild. And we're going to put the arena in the middle of it because somebody thinks that's a great idea. That is going to be mayhem. And nobody didn't even realize that the library was trying to take lanes out of 2nd Avenue. I don't see how I read these reports and they get missed because they go to council, they go places, they've been out forever. Then I get professional people saying, why would you say that the library wants to take lanes out of 2nd Avenue? Well, because it's in the report. And when I show them the simple pictures and I say, go back and look at the page, then they realize it. I went on the Janes Walk, and experts, supposedly project manager for the deed, says, oh no, we're going to have 2 lanes of traffic each way on 23rd Street. I'm sitting with somebody from downtown YXC, and I said, that's not what's in the report. So I had to prove it to them. Sure enough, they don't. There's only going to be 1 lane each way on 23rd Street. There's going to be bottlenecks everywhere. And these people are allowed to work independently. They don't have to make their plans merge. And we wonder why we're having problems. Now we're already planning that the bus system in the fall is already going to have issues. But yet we're going to, what? We're going to tell our kids to find alternate ways to school because we haven't had enough time to plan? We've had more than enough time to plan. The reasons we gave before why the buses weren't running weren't valid, and the same reasons are going to get used again. I can do better. Give me the chance. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Same question to Cynthia.
Thank you. I know that no city council has done more for basic infrastructure than this council has over the past 8 years. And that's proven in the numbers. In each of the years that I have been on council, we have spent more money on roads, sidewalks, and underground infrastructure, including the replacement of every lead line in the city. We will be completing that project in 2027. We are moving forward, and we are putting Saskatoon on a better life cycle for basic infrastructure than ever before. There was a time not that long ago that our basic funding for roadways was on a 70-year cycle, every 70 years. It is now on best practices, 20 to 25 years. Our sidewalks, 200 years. We are now working toward best practices, and we are fully funded to have that also on a 20 to 30-year cycle. Those are best practices. It matters to me that we don't reduce taxes just so that we have to spend more money later for all of those kinds of things that are foundational to our city. I mean, they're the way we get around, but it's also what attracts businesses and tourism. And for all of the reasons that everyone knows, because you call me about your potholes, we need to do better. We can only do 5% of our network per year, but we're getting there, and I'm committed to maintaining that. I'm proud that we're moving forward on the bus rapid transit system. This is a modern public transportation system, one that will transform the way we move around. And with 30,000 new people arriving in Saskatoon in the last few years, it becomes more important than ever that we have a reliable, efficient, and modern system that helps people move around. And I think foundationally is housing. We must do the things that we can so that that type of infrastructure can accelerate our ability to use the bus rapid transit system and help our overall city become more affordable. And I just wanted to say one thing about waste management. The opportunity for us to be able to create a green bin program, it isn't just about environmental sustainability, which is extremely important. It also gives us that opportunity to stave off the need to replace our landfill. That's going to save us hundreds of millions of dollars. They're both together. What I'm finding increasingly is the more that we work at this, that the economy and sustainability go hand in hand, and our ability to create and deliver the best services possible for our city relies on us being open and transparent and helping folks understand why we do the things that we do. And I'm committed to communicating as well as I possibly can to ensure that we are going forward together as we make these decisions as a city.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. I will ask the same question to Don. How do you plan to address the city's infrastructure needs while ensuring the essential services like public transit, waste management, emergency services are not only maintained but also improved to meet the demands of a larger population?
Thank you. Well, Saskatoon's at a critical juncture right now in its growth, and we must ensure that infrastructure and essential services evolve to meet the demands of a larger population. To do this, we need to examine how effectively our current services are operating. Take curbside recycling as an example, a program that promised much but delivered far less. Before 2013, our recycling system consisted of depots, managed 75,000 tons of paper annually at a cost of $300,000. around $40 per ton. However, when curbside recycling was introduced, we were told it would collect 26,000 tons per year and significantly boost our recycling rate. But in 2022, curbside program collected just over 7,000 tons. Far from the promised 26,000, the total cost over $7.5 million annually, or about $750 per ton. And the diversion rate is still about 23%. Compared to the $105 per ton cost of sending material to the landfill. And it's clear we have a problem. It may cost more to get positive environmental results, but not at 7 to 10 times more. The goal also must be no new landfill. The poor planning isn't isolated. It raises the question about other programs are failing to meet the objectives of how much more waste exists in our budget. Our current City Council reacts to immediate issues without considering long-term consequences. Plus, public transit is an example of this lack of foresight. The Bus Rapid Transit, now called LINK, now known as LINK project, is currently underestimated, and I believe will cost $1 billion when completed. There's also the operating budget to account for. We're not going to take away parking on Broadway Avenue. Also, fewer people are working downtown and going to the office. The BRT LINK plan hasn't been adjusted for this phenomenon. On the top of this, it will take 5 to 7 minutes longer to get from point A to point B on your bus rather than your vehicle. I think most are most likely to take our car at that point in time. What we need are buses that work, that have air conditioning in the summer, heat in the winter, and also we need to have what's called frequent bus service on the main thoroughfares every 6 to 10 minutes. Miss one when it's 40 below, and there'll just be another bus around the corner for you shortly. Service you can rely on. We need a school in Brighton. I will work with the school boards and province we need to build us other schools just like we have in the past. We must put an alternative program forward for everyone.
Thank you so much, Don. Yeah. So lastly, Gord, for your final remarks.
Well, thanks very much. Well, maintenance and improvement of our infrastructure go hand in hand. We've seen examples across this country where municipalities have neglected their infrastructure. You only have to look at Calgary, who's going to have another month to month and a half of water restrictions because they didn't take care of their infrastructure. Cities like Montreal, other cities across this province, across this country. So we need to spend some time concentrating on what our infrastructure deficit really is. As I mentioned in my opening comments, $250 million deficit in road maintenance, and that doesn't count all the other other maintenance issues that we have in the city that are deferred. So we need to concentrate on it. If we want to grow this city, if we want this city to be as prosperous as it can be, and this city is the economic engine of Saskatchewan, if we want it to continue to be that way, we need to make sure that we're providing the proper services to the people of Saskatoon and the proper services for people who want to expand in our economy. We've gone through the Bus Rapid Transit program. I think it's a good program. I think it gives some congratulations to the administration for bringing it forward, but we still have places in Saskatoon where it takes an hour and a half for somebody to get from Aspen Ridge downtown. And we need to make sure that that bus system is safe. But from an infrastructure perspective, if we're not taking care of our infrastructure, if we're not planning for it, planning for its improvement, then we can't hope to grow the economy in this city. It's so important in terms of the growth of the economy to make sure that we can provide adequate infrastructure to the people of this city. We've seen it all over the place in terms of other cities where we see failed infrastructure. So we need to concentrate on that, and we're going to do that by concentrating on core services, by reprioritizing how we budget in this city. We've seen multiple double-digit tax increases in this city, and we're not seeing any substantive improvement in our infrastructure. Sure, there's been more money spent on infrastructure, but we have much more infrastructure to maintain and more infrastructure to put in the ground and maintain with respect to the expansion of our economy. So we need to spend some time concentrating on how we budget in Saskatoon to make sure that we have the resources available to not just maintain our infrastructure, but deal with the infrastructure deficit that we already have. And again, making sure that we provide the right infrastructure for a growing community. We want companies to relocate here. We want people to live here. And with populations the way that we're growing, in terms of the need for affordable housing, other housing within the housing continuum. If we're not providing the services, if we're not providing the adequate level of funding through our budget, then we're failing the people of Saskatoon. And quite frankly, that's going to be a detriment not just to the people that live in this city today, but for future generations who come and want to live in this city and who want to move to the city.
Thank you so much for your responses. Now over to Madhurja.
Thanks, Rashid. So our next question is about economic development. Saskatoon has a diverse economy, just like many other Canadian cities, but it faces challenges in maintaining its sustainable growth and creating new opportunities for its residents. Our question is, what specific strategies would you implement to attract new businesses, support local entrepreneurs, and ensure economic resilience in the face of global uncertainties? Each candidate will have up to 3 minutes to respond. I'll start with Cynthia.
Thanks. I think that this is an example where we need a lot of us together to solve the problems of our time and to take advantage of the opportunities. I'm very proud of the plan for growth that our city has created, where we are doing our business not just for the city, but for the region. The Saskatoon Regional Economic Development Association has been a real support to us as we move down this path to work with the communities of Martinsville, Osler, Warman, and the arm of Kermit Park, so that we can strategize how to bring industries to our city in a way that is more coordinated and beneficial to everyone in the region. I think this is a huge opportunity. And as I sit on the SRETA board, I hear all the time about the ways in which we are bringing people in and finding new opportunities to be able to augment the business community that we have both in Saskatoon and in the wider area. And I think the university is a really big part of how we move forward as well. I think about the rare earth minerals that everyone's talking about in our province. And I think about VITO, Canada's Vaccine Research Centre, and the place to develop vaccines. These are all new and exciting opportunities for our city, and Saskatoon needs to be a part of it. So how does the city directly get involved? Well, SRETA, we are the main funder of SRETA. We help to work in partnership with business and with business organizations and with the university to help move Saskatoon forward in a coordinated way. I think that that's one of the beauties of our city, is that we work together. We find out who's got the expertise, who's the best to do each level to be able to achieve great things together. And I think just on a specific level, I wanted to mention that as you know, at the city, I continue to support a low business tax ratio, Indigenous procurement policies, tax abatements for new businesses, and expansion of businesses. These are all pieces that help our city grow and become better. Another thing that I wanted to talk just a little bit about, and this is sort of going back a little bit to the Saskatoon Regional Economic Development Association. Their pivotal role in what we do is going to help our city move forward in the ways that I've already described, but also in specific ways. They have specific programs for businesses and entrepreneurs that are designed to support Indigenous businesses, and also for newcomers, for immigrants, for people that are trying to get ahead in our community. And I think that probably speaks to the wider issue, that if we understand that businesses moving forward means all of the businesses and all of the people in our city having the ability to benefit from business, I think we will do a better job, and we'll have more prosperity for the future and a solid path forward for the next generation.
Thanks, Cynthia. Now we'll go to Don.
Thank you. When I see this question like this, I'm reminded by a quote by Winston Churchill. Quote, "Some regard private enterprise as if it were a predatory tiger to be shot. Others look upon it as a cow they can milk. Only a handful see it what it really is, the strong horse that pulls the cart." I believe it is the role of government to remove obstacles from the strong horse's path. Too often our city gets in the way or creates a muddy track that slows it down. My objective is to make Saskatoon the most business-friendly city in Canada once again. I will ask Council to adopt this as a first goal at the first meeting of Council. We will send a clear message. Saskatoon is open for business. Building permits will be processed faster than ever before. Gone will be the days of months-long waits. We will interpret building codes and bylaws broadly. focusing on getting to yes, we can, not no, you can't. We will treat every business as if our lives depend on their success, as that it's truly for us to have a vibrant and growing and healthy city. We will collaborate with the provincial government, Trade and Export Partnership, STEP, and other organizations to connect Saskatoon businesses with the world. We won't forget our local businesses either, the men and women who built Saskatoon. We'll listen to the NSBA, the Chamber, Prairieland Park, ensuring that small family businesses thrive alongside each other. Regarding the arena and convention center, well, it seems a way to revitalize downtown. One of the real reasons for the decline of our city center is the perceived lack of safety. In short term, creating a safer downtown in the first step is to a far more prosperous downtown. However, I share the concerns of many regarding this cost. The initial estimate was $379 million. That number has now ballooned to $1.2 billion, with the cost likely to reach $2.2 billion when completed. And we've seen similar discrepancies in other projects. Take the project renovation at Harry Bailey, going from $13.4 million to just over $30 million. The city's in a difficult position. If it underestimates the cost to make the project seem more feasible, it risks capping federal funding, leaving Saskatoon taxpayers responsible for the overruns. If it's honest about the likely $2.2 billion, citizens may realize this project isn't affordable at this particular time. As a mayor, I will be pro-business and pro-growth, ensuring that we say yes to businesses, which leads to a stronger tax base,
Thanks, Don.
better services.
So before I go to Gordon, I'm just going to repeat the question again. What specific strategies would you implement to attract new businesses, support local entrepreneurs, and ensure economic resilience in the face of global uncertainties?
Well, thanks very much. Well, Saskatoon is an incredibly entrepreneurial city. But in order to maintain that, we need to be competitive, and we need to have predictability when it comes to taxes. We work hard to collaborate, to innovate, and to study here in Saskatchewan. We're home to one of the 15 research-intensive universities in the country. We're happy to have a research park located at the University of Saskatchewan, and now we're relocating Sask Polytechnic at the University of Saskatchewan to create even a bigger hub for industry, for research, for development. This is going to create a significant magnet in the community for pulling companies in that want to do research at a research-intensive university with a polytechnic and a research park. But we need to make sure that we're being competitive about it. We need to make sure that we're providing the services that those companies need. Now, how are we going to do that? You know, I kind of regret to say that we haven't, over the last 8 years, had anybody really go out and market this city. When Don Atchison was mayor, he was a good champion of that. He got out and around and talked about how great the city was and tried to market the city. We haven't had that for 8 years. What we need in the mayor's chair is someone that can go out and market the city. I've spent lots of time in my time as minister in the Crown in Regina, spending time going on trade missions, marketing the province, marketing the city, talking about how great the city is. But think about the opportunities there are at the University of Saskatchewan. We have the second fastest growing tech hub in the country. And we can do better. We can do better by attracting companies from all over the world, from the United States, from Europe. We've already had some success in seeing some companies relocate out to Innovation Place. We need to make sure that we're spending time marketing the city, talking about how great this community is. But again, we need to be competitive. We can't be having double-digit tax increases and creating uncertainty for businesses that are coming to this community. We need to make sure that we provide the infrastructure, certainly. But at the end of the day, if we're not concentrating on the core services of government in terms of providing the security, providing the infrastructure that we need for the expansion of these businesses, then we can't be competitive. We need to make sure that we're competitive, and we need to make sure that we're consistent when it comes to tax increases. And the only way we're going to do that is to have a deep dive through the budget, make sure we're providing security, make sure we're providing the efficiencies at City Hall that we need to make sure that that we're providing the right services, that we have the right resources available to support those new businesses that are coming to this community.
Thanks, Gordon. Now we'll go to Cary.
Well, Saskatoon should be leading the way. Saskatoon should be an efficient, lean city, but we're not. We're not where we should be by a long shot, and too many people know it. I can tell you personally that I'm aware of 2 very large ventures that purposely avoided coming into the city of Saskatoon because they didn't want to deal with us. And that hurt me. It really did. It doesn't make sense. People don't want to deal with us for planning issues. They don't want to deal with us for dealing with building inspections. And yet they have to go outside the jurisdiction to deal with the same building code. Why is it so different? Because the focus here is regulatory. Other agencies are looking to expedite. If you go down to Arizona, I've done a project in Tempe where they have a project expediter. $4 million warehouse, you call them up and you say, hey, we've got a couple of pieces of land we're looking at possibly buying for this purpose, but there's so many things, it's US regulations, what do we need to do? One person, you make one phone call, they go find everything. Anything you might need, they come back to you for. And anybody that goes around that to get to you copies them. So they are trying to help you. They don't work for you, they work for the municipality. It doesn't circumvent planning processes. It's expediting your decision to say yes, go, or no go. And Saskatoon is failing in that regard. I would agree that the last 8 years have been devoid of proper research and promotion for what we should be doing within our city. We're agricultural based, and we should be looking at so many of the industries, and yet people are looking at a way to get away. We shouldn't be trying to force every business use in the downtown core, because some businesses don't want to have their office space in the downtown core. Who's that to suit? To suit the city or to suit the business? And if a business can't get what they want, they'll be in Warman sooner than they can. So an engineering firm that doesn't want to have a downtown office location at high cost will end up doing that, won't they? I mean, the whole problem with this thing is that we have too many things that get out of hand and people lose track. So I'll give you something small. If you're a small business owner in Saskatoon right now, and you know you've got a 2-inch water meter, pretty simple thing. I can tell you that if you spend about $500 to convert that to a 1-inch water meter, you could save about $5,500 a year in just flat out fees from the city. You pay the same amount for water use, and if the volume is sufficient under the pressure, you don't need that 2-inch water meter. And so we've been helping businesses try to figure that out because they're getting gouged. This is not the type of processes that the city should be involved in. And things need to be made in such a way because business drives our economy. We should be open for business, and we should be open and fair with everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Corey. Now I'll move to Christina.
Thank you, Madhurja. Thank you, candidates, once again for being part of the Mayoral Forum 2024. Our next topic is housing affordability and homelessness. Let's face it, it's an issue that's been talked about just about everywhere, and the topics are significant issues for us all in Saskatoon. I want to ask you your plans to increase access to affordable housing, support those experiencing homelessness, and address the root causes of housing insecurity in the city. In this case, we'll start where we ended off and we'll go to Cary.
Go to Cary. Okay. That's out of sequence. Housing and homelessness. Well, I can tell you that we've been following this subject for a number of years. I can tell you that the infill that should have been taking place in the city all these years hasn't been happening the way it should have been. During the last election, we mapped out every residence on Pleasant Hill that was boarded up or abandoned. And it was interesting because last summer, the assistant fire chief posted a report that other agencies use as an official document and said there were 7 boarded up and abandoned properties in all of Pleasant Hill. And I was otherwise occupied, but I ended up having to change my work for a day. We drove every street again, and there was 35 properties that were boarded up or abandoned, which constituted about 60 units right there. Since then, I can tell you we've driven Mount Royal and Westmount, and there's a whole bunch more of empty lots, boarded up properties. In some jurisdictions, properties that are boarded up and abandoned for a length of time can be seized by the jurisdiction without cost. And we could be giving them to Habitat for Humanity or the Métis Association, and they will infill housing for people. But when we talk about homelessness, specifically. Most often, we're not really talking about people without a home that are just having problems financially getting by. It's people that are unhousable. And that's what's happened in Fairhaven. We've dumped a whole bunch of people in a shelter that should never have been there, and all the people around it are unhousable. So even Chief Arcand doesn't want them in a shelter, and they're wandering around subdivisions of people causing mayhem. This is a problem. And you can't keep dropping people like this in residential areas and expect good outcome. These people are unhousable because they're addicted, they're unpredictable, they're violent. You put them in an apartment, by morning they could have the electrical wiring ripped out of the walls. They could start a fire in the building. They have to be monitored. And there's some of these people that have had mental issues their whole life that need to be in a group home. And I'm aware of one particular group that's been trying for quite a while. They have valid experience to run a group home like this, to take care of these people in a careful way, in a protected way, so that they have a safe place to live, because they have mental difficulties and they're being abandoned and abused on the street. And they can't get funding from the provincial government, and they can't get help from the city administration. And I can tell you things like this get under my skin, and I can tell you that we need to do a lot better work, but we got to quit making the same mistakes over and over again. And Fairhaven should have taught us a lesson, but I have a feeling we're going to keep learning it. I can do better. Give me a chance.
Thank you, Cary. We'll move onward now, and Don Atchison, it's your turn.
Thank you. Housing affordability and homelessness are pressing issues in Saskatoon, and we need to approach them particularly with compassion. Let's start with affordable housing. The current City Council has made a mistake by rushing to accept federal funding that comes with strings attached, disrupting our carefully crafted zoning regulations and putting our beloved green spaces at risk. Allowing fourplexes to be built next to single homes without proper consideration will not only change the character, the fabric, the heart, and the soul of our neighborhoods, it can destroy our community as a whole. And it will reduce property taxes and values as well. Worse, there's no guarantee that Saskatoon's being promised will actually occur. And if you think about the $41 million that we've been promised, think about it. 9 cents a day, per day, every day for 4 years. And we're willing to take a risk where other communities already, where the federal government has said, no, you didn't fulfill your obligation. Housing is a fundamental need for everyone, and it's about supply and demand. The cost of service land is a major barrier to creating more affordable homes. We need to review the Saskatoon Land Bank's impact on housing prices. It's clear that while the land bank brings in revenue, it also drives up the cost of home ownership. We should explore ways to lessen this burden and make it easier to build smaller, entry-level homes. Additionally, we need to streamline the construction process by cutting red tape. The city needs to be more responsive and say yes to builders and developers much more quickly. When it comes to homelessness, we must regard this issue as it affects everyone and the diverse groups of people that are involved. For example, there's veterans, families, seniors, and those struggling with mental health and addictions. One approach I support is the Homes for Heroes. This model provides temporary, safe, clean housing specifically designed for different needs. This isn't about creating permanent homes or large, impersonal housing projects. It's about offering a stepping stone to stability in a purpose-built area, away from established neighborhoods. We need to enforce strict rules in these temporary homes. No drugs, no alcohol, and no exceptions. This model has been proven to work. We saw it with the success on Avenue T and Avenue U, where calls for service dropped by 98%. We can address homelessness in Saskatoon without sacrificing our city's integrity. I'm setting an objective to create 10,000 units of attainable housing over the next 10 years, with a broader goal to an additional 20 to 30,000 units.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don. And over to Gord. It's your turn, Gord.
Thank you very much, Christine. Well, I hope we all understand what some of the root causes are of housing insecurity in this city. We certainly need to be able to provide more safe and affordable housing in Saskatoon. There's a number of ways that we can do that. One of the ways that we used to be able to coordinate this among a number of agencies around the city, we used to have the Regional Intersectorial Committee that were doing good work in this area. That's been disbanded by council, and I really don't understand the reasons why that happened. But that was an organization that coordinated a lot of the work that was being done by agencies within the inner city with other individuals in the city that were trying to bring forward some solutions. So I think what we need to do is we need to reestablish that committee, bring those groups together, and look at some of the best practices that come from Camponi, that come from Quint Developments, that come from programs that have been proposed by the United Way. So we need to bring all that together, but we really need to concentrate on ensuring that what we're doing is reducing red tape. I agree with Don in terms of reducing red tape at City Hall to make it simpler, to make it easier, to make it more streamlined of providing housing in this community. We can do that with tax abatements. We can do that with development fee levies, waivers of development fees. But these are all important things in terms of ensuring that we're providing what people need in this community. I want to talk briefly about the Housing Accelerator Fund. I think developing more density along our BRT routes is excellent. I was opposed to the Housing Accelerator Fund only from the perspective that I didn't think that there was enough consultation with the community. And it's raised lots of issues in various neighborhoods around the city in terms of what's going to happen to their neighborhood. And I think that there could have been more consultation. I think there could have been more discussions with the federal government in terms of how we moved forward with that to bring some more clarity to how it was actually going to affect communities in this city. There was a issue at City Hall just the other day where there was a number of people that got together to start complaining about what was going to happen up in Lakeview. And these people have legitimate concerns. It's not that we can't, that we don't need to build affordable housing or more housing in the city, but people who live in those communities need to understand how it's going to impact. And I don't think that we provided enough opportunity for the people of Saskatoon to engage, to understand exactly how it was going to impact us. As far as the federal government is concerned, you know, if you believe the polls, there's going to be a federal election next year and there's going to be a new government. There's no guarantee we're going to get the $41 million. The Conservatives, if they get elected, will have their own program. So I think in terms of risking $41 million for a blanket rezoning of the city, I think was folly. But I do think that there's some elements in the Housing Accelerator Fund that can be used for the benefit of our community. I just think there needed to be much more consultation with the community and with the people of the city so they understood exactly what the impact was going to be.
Thank you very much, Gord. And finally, on this topic, and I'll repeat the question again if you're just joining us for the Mayoral Forum, this topic is about one of the more significant issues in Saskatoon, affordability and homelessness, and the plans to increase access to affordable housing, supporting homelessness, and addressing the root causes of housing insecurity. Cynthia?
Thank you, Christina. If this issue was easy to solve, we would have done it already. A city somewhere would have done it already. I can tell you that it's been all hands on deck with the city as we see an accelerating crisis in our community, and we are working as urgently as we can with all orders of government, including Indigenous governments, to try to find a better path forward. The drug crisis, combined with the affordability crisis, combined with the homeless crisis, is contributing to ever more homeless people on the streets. There are a variety of reasons why people become homeless, but those three crises together are making it very difficult for service providers and policymakers to keep pace. But that doesn't mean we give up. It means we roll up our sleeves, and it means we keep inviting people in and look for new ways to do better. And in terms of what we actually are doing right now, just last night, Council approved a zoning change in the Wildwood area that will allow more affordable housing. And as for the HALF program, yes, I agree there are problems with that program. I disagreed with that program from day one and tried urgently to find ways to have more of a say in how we could implement that program. Not only was that not going to be allowed, but it was abundantly clear, talking to other federal parties, that there will be no opportunity, this is what they've said, that our ability to get access to federal government infrastructure programs and other programs will be contingent on cities loosening their zoning around transit in order to provide more housing. And so, yeah, it's not the best situation. I think that what we can do, though, is continue to use regulation and consultation in community to make sure the corridors around bus rapid transit are more not just beautiful, but sustainable, and ways that people want to live and work and walk around in their neighborhoods. But just back to the actual task at hand, I think it's important to remember that people deserve a roof over their heads, and I support a Housing First program. I think we have to work urgently to figure this out. Here's the thing, we have people that are on the streets that are students. We have students living in a 2-bedroom apartment with 9 people. I had one guy tell me that he's sleeping in a closet. We urgently need to do better. And we do know a few things about what needs to happen on the social side. We know that when people are safely housed, they are far less likely to be involved in other types of behaviors. Shelters are a Band-Aid, and they are not designed to be long-term. We need to move urgently to get folks into shelter, but we also have to have a plan to transition them out. The plan isn't to keep people in a homeless shelter. The plan is to give them supports.
Thank you so much.
Perfect.
And thank you.
Sorry, go ahead, Christy.
Thank you to all of the candidates for answering this question. And I was just going to simply throw it back to the studio. Thanks again.
Thank you, Christina, and thank you all for your responses. And thanks to the hundreds of viewers watching us live right now. We will be back after a very quick break, so thank you. Welcome back, everyone. We are back with more questions. And yeah, I will pass it on to Madhur Jo to ask the next question.
So our next question is about climate action and environmental sustainability. This round is about climate action. And so, as you know, cities around the world are grappling with the impacts of climate change. And it's crucial for our local government to take proactive measures. What are your priorities for reducing Saskatoon's carbon footprint, promoting environmental sustainability, and preparing the city for the impacts of the climate change? I'll start with Don.
As we confront the realities of climate change, it's critical to adopt strategies that are both effective and realistic for Saskatoon. The $9 billion low emissions report is unrealistic that the city of Saskatoon has. The recommendations are not only staggeringly expensive, but also seem to be cobbled together with bad and failing ideas from around the world. The sheer scale of this plan suggests that we are looking at financial burdens that could overwhelm both our residents and our businesses. Let's break it down. Every major city in Canada, if they were to implement a plan like this, the total cost would balloon to approximately $1.6 trillion. Put that in perspective, today's national debt is $1.2 trillion. Even with the projected savings of $33 billion, experience with government initiatives shows us that such savings usually are overstated and they rarely materialize at any point in time. The report envisions a scenario where residents make substantial investments in compliance, which raises serious concerns about its feasibility and fairness. Rather than adhering to a plan that may not be sustainable, our approach should be grounded in practicality. We need to prioritize adaptive measures that address the specific changes we face, such as increased rainfall and extreme weather. The most effective strategy we can adopt is to reduce emissions, I believe, to support the provincial adaptation of nuclear power. Nuclear energy provides a reliable and low source emission of power that can help reduce our carbon footprint while ensuring that we have the abundant clean energy necessary to thrive in our northern climate. Moreover, the proposed mandates for solar panels on all buildings and forced deep energy retrofits on existing homes may disproportionately affect the lower and middle income residents. We've seen these policies elsewhere, and they lead to financial strain. For instance, residents in jurisdictions with stringent energy regulations have severe financial hardships, including energy poverty. All you have to do is look in Texas, look in California, look around the world, and you can see this happening all the time. It's ironic that this plan will mandate that new homes and commercial buildings must include solar panels was created in a city where a new sustainable neighborhood with all homes featuring solar panels was turned down by City Council. Can you believe that? A state-of-the-art, most modern, environmentally community, and City Council said no. To sum it up, we must be smart and strategic about our climate actions. Let's focus on adaptations, not unrealistic carbon reductions.
Thanks, Don. Now I'll go to Gordon.
Well, thanks very much. Well, first of all, I want to give a couple of kudos out, I think, to the administration. You know, we've gone from storms that were 1 in 100 years to 1 in 10 years now. And the administration has adopted some strategies that are pretty progressive when it comes to climate change. We've got new stormwater ponds in new neighborhoods, and we've adapted some of the old neighborhoods with storm ponds and with super pipes. Those are ways that we can adapt. We have a robust waste reduction program, but we can do better. Don Atchison mentioned the Solera project. That was a project that was a fully integrated, sustainable, off-the-grid community. If we want to be progressive when it comes to ensuring that we're adaptive with mitigation strategies, we have to be open to these kinds of conversations. And the fact that the administration and City Council decided that it wasn't really in the development plan, the city wasn't ready for it, I think that's really a bit of a cop-out. We need to be ensuring that what we're doing is spending time looking at adaptive strategies and mitigation strategies to deal with climate change. And that was a great example of it, and there'll be more examples of it too. But it's true. We can start putting adaptive strategies in place, forcing people to have solar panels on their house, but that materially affects the low-income people. We can mandate these kinds of things, but we have to be very selective at it. We have to look at mitigation strategies. We have to look at new technologies. And earlier in one of my answers, I talked about this. There's significant work that's being done at the University of Saskatchewan around photovoltaics, around other methodologies and technologies, whether at the University of Saskatchewan, the University of Regina is doing the same kind of work that's going to be able to allow us to use technologies in a more productive way, in a more responsible way, to deal with the effects of climate change. There's no question that we're going to have to deal with it, but mitigation strategies and adaptive strategies are the only way we're going to accomplish that. Reducing our reliance on fossil fuels when it comes to energy production. Saskatoon Light and Power buys all its power from Sask Power at the present time. And that's mostly all energy that's created by the burning of fossil fuels. And we have to get better at that. The provincial government is moving forward on a strategy around nuclear energy with small nuclear reactors, and that's just a matter of time. That's not a matter of when or if they're going to do it. That's going to happen. But that's going to take some time. And in the meantime, we have to find more adaptive strategies, use some of the best research that's coming out of our universities right here in Saskatoon, right here in Saskatchewan, to look to see better ways of mitigating and having adaptive strategies.
Okay. Thanks, Gordon. So again, our question is, what are your priorities for reducing Saskatoon's carbon footprint, promoting environmental sustainability, and preparing the city for the impacts of climate change? I'll now go with Cynthia.
Thank you. The Low Emissions Community Plan for our city is a 40-year plan. And it's designed to be adaptable as we go, and we bite it off in chunks so that what we are doing is on the one hand, improving our environmental footprint, reducing our environmental footprint, and then the other side, also saving money. LED lighting in all of our buildings and in streetlights. It's been a huge savings for the city of Saskatoon. Our first ever solar farm in Dundonald. I think we could use more. The return on investment is good for our community. These are the kinds of things that I think we have to keep in mind as we are looking forward to the future and adapting as we go. This is a lot of new technology that we have to consider, but I think we have to use the best evidence and data as we move forward. And having communities that are fully solar-based could be a great idea. But if it was that simple, we would have done it. The cost to do that type of program, I think most taxpayers would agree, were completely cost prohibitive and should not move forward at this time, at least not in the area that it had been proposed. I want to talk a little bit about the accomplishments. Our greenhouse gas emissions have been reduced not only by things like solar, but also electric buses. We have our 2 first electric buses on the road, and I would like to see us get more of those. Our home energy loan program has been extremely popular. I would like to see us expand that. We have a lot of green infrastructure programs, as Gord mentioned, the store ponds, but also the ponds that are happening in the interior of the city that are helping flood mitigation, saving homes and businesses and future-proofing our city. We have a lot of investments into our urban forest. It has been crucial as we see more invasive species. And I think bus rapid transit can't be overlooked. It's a critical part of how we're going to move around as a city in the future. And to go with that is housing. Housing needs to grow more inward and upward, not outward. For every meter of sidewalk and roadway that we produce as a city, we become a more expensive city, and we contribute to more GHG emissions, more hauling, more having to go farther to pick up garbage and further on transit. All of the services that we need to provide become more expensive environmentally and financially. So in my view, I think that we need to move forward with the course we're on, always adapt as we go, and look forward to a couple of other things that we should be looking at, like roof solar, and also providing EV chargers where people live. Not everyone has a garage, so how do we move this forward as a city so that everyone can participate?
Thanks, Cynthia. Now I'll go to Cary.
Well, the city's plan on environment is confusing. That's probably the best way. But before I start, my background in the military, one of my duties used to be a nuclear, biological, chemical defense minister or officer. And so nuclear power doesn't scare me. I believe that because we have expertise in chemical within our city, I think we're well suited to look to nuclear power for the future, because I've been asked a lot about that. But we're, as everybody said, we're a long ways away from that yet. Our city grid is insufficient to have an electric grid for running electric cars and all these things that are talked about, by the way. But we're giving mixed messages. The city of Saskatoon says we want to do a waste reduction strategy for the dump, except that now the housing accelerator says, well, but we can take any single family residential viable house, we can tear it down, haul it to the dump, and then we can build a fourplex. So there's a lot of carbon footprint going there. Then they say, well, we're going to reduce our stormwater emissions because we want everybody to have soft surfaces. Go to the city website, look it up. But now we're going to have, what, 4 driveways maybe on a lot that used to have 1. We're going to have a larger coverage for buildings. So we're going to generate more stormwater through the housing accelerator than what was ever proposed for that given subdivision. So if the subdivision had flooding before and we allow housing accelerator to go ahead, it's going to be substantially worse, isn't it? Hard surface runoff is one thing. Heat island is another, though. When you create hard surfaces, what do? You create heat. And that's what's known for infrastructure. But if you go to the city website, they also say, well, we want you to have solar cells on your house because the city would like you to help produce electricity. But then we say, well, we can allow 15-meter high buildings next door to you, which might cut out all the sun for all the very expensive solar we put in, and you won't have any recourse to get repaid for that. Then they tell people we want food security, so we want you to help grow your own garden, and we promote that. Except that, again, we could build a building next door to you now, allowed through the housing accelerator, never before, that could block the entire sun out for you. And so why are we doing all of these conflicting things over and over again? Because people don't get one plan together. Everybody goes off in their own direction, and nobody consolidates these plans. So they tell you in one part of a city website to do one thing, and then they're actually going to try and do something else to you. We can't keep doing this. In big cities, by the way, for stormwater, like if you go to Seattle, they have a very automated way of releasing stormwater from big businesses. We may end up being in that way someday. We may end up having to do that. But we have a real mess when it comes to stormwater collection in our city, and we are not consistent in what we do. And we give that poor message to business, which are very frustrated with the way we handle things. We can do better.
Thanks everyone for your responses. Now I'll move to Rashid.
Thank you, Madhurja. So our last question is about community safety and policing. Community safety and policing are at forefront of public concern in Saskatoon. How do you intend to balance the need for effective law enforcement with community-based approaches to safety that address underlying social issues? What reforms, if any, would you advocate for us in our policing system? I will start with Gordon.
Well, thanks very much. Well, this is a key part of my campaign, and really everything that flows from this is part of public safety. We know that there's public safety challenges right across this city, whether that's in Pleasant Hill, whether that's in Riversdale, whether that's in Lakeview, whether that's in Varsity View. We have challenges right across the city. Just downtown, there's businesses now that lock their doors. You have to knock the door before you can go in and visit some of the businesses downtown on 2nd Avenue. I took a walk down there just the other day, 5 broken windows on a Monday morning. And that's just not sustainable. We want to build a downtown entertainment district in an area where there's safety challenges. We know that there's people that are visiting the hotels, whether it's the Cavalier or the Besborough, who have to walk down to Credit Union Center, or to TCU Place, I should say, who don't feel safe walking down the streets. We know there's a 9% reduction in the last civic survey that showed that people didn't feel safe being downtown. So we really need to, this is a real challenge for our city. I've had a conversation with the Chief of Police. We underfund our police service. We have the lowest number of police officers per capita for any population over 100,000 in the country. How do you expect to be able to provide a safe community when you don't have enough police officers on the street? This isn't about arresting your way out of the challenges that we have. It's not. But providing more police on the streets provides more visibility, and that's a crime reduction strategy that we need to employ. I've also talked to the chief about how we're going to work on decentralizing our police service. We have a police station downtown that was built for 30 years that's now full. So how do you ensure that you decentralize the police service to make sure that our response times are more efficient, that you're serving the public? And he talked about it. He said, you know, we're already thinking about that. We're talking about a precinct office on the east side of Saskatoon and a precinct office on the west side of Saskatoon. And I'd suggested to him, and these are all his decisions, but I suggested to him that with an increased number of resources, we would be able to do that, both with the number of police officers and with the establishment of precinct offices. And the first one on the west side, I think, has to go in Fairhaven. We failed when the shelter went into place. The city failed to put a community safety plan in place. Now, there's lots of blame to go around when it comes to the shelters, no question about it. But one thing that the city failed on is ensuring that the community was safe. I was out in the neighborhood the other day, met with a woman who's living in a retirement home. She's crying on my shoulder. 2 people were sleeping in her gazebo. That's her retirement home. That's where she wants to live until she decides that she's going to move into something else. We have done a disservice to those communities by having the homeless shelter there. And as many know, I've spoken to Chief Arcand about moving the shelter. And he's agreeable with that. But that's going to take a conversation with the provincial government, it's going to take a conversation with the city, and it's going to take a conversation with the community and with the tribal council.
Thank you so much. Same question to Cynthia.
So I too have been in conversations with our new chief of police, and I think my numbers are a little different than I heard from the police chief. I believe that the numbers per 100,000 that Mr. Wyant's speaking about is not for Canada-wide, it's for the province. And our city has definitely had some challenges, but I think it's important to realize that it's the police budget that comes to council. And in each of the 8 years that I have been on council, that budget has increased, and most of the time well above what the rate of inflation is. And that's because we're seeing some serious issues. And every time the police have asked the city to approve their budget, we have. And at this point, almost 1/4 of every $1.25, I think it's 23, goes directly to the police budget. That's a big number, and it's been increasing steadily since 2017. I think it's important that we look at this carefully. Why is that? Is it because we have to keep policing our way out of the issues? Is that the only way? Then if you look at the numbers a little bit more closely, you realize that a large number of those calls are for social behavior. And I think that that's a very poor use of very expensive resources. I would like to make sure that police can focus on crime and that social behaviors are handled in the proper channels that they should through the provincial government. One of the things that I've actually been really proud of, and a way that I think that the province and the city are working together really well, is through a program called PACT. Basically, it's police and social services workers that go out together. And so when they go to a call, they can decide who's the best lead to handle that call, and the other is always there for backup. I think we need to see more of that. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the investments in crime prevention as they pertain to community safety and well-being. And here are just a few. We've done staffed public washrooms, free accessible public recreation programs for low income, and also we have low income bus fares and leisure passes. We have community safety officers on our transit system starting just in this past month. And we continue to do increases wherever possible in alternative response officers, because this is another way that police can lead to more effectively make sure the resources are dedicated where they need. And I just want to say one other really important thing, that probably the single greatest thing we could do to see crime go down in our city is to make sure people are safely housed. When people are off the streets and into safe shelter, the vulnerability goes down, and all of us become more safe in community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. Same question to Cary.
Well, safety. I think personally that we should have modular shelters in a light industrial area. I think that removing people from where they're at risk would be a benefit, and I think we could reconfigure things as we need over time without buying buildings and investing in buildings that are never suited for the task. We got to remove people from residential areas that are causing mayhem. We can't allow them to continue to operate, and many of them are breaking the law repeatedly and causing this problem. We need to go back to something called Peel's principles, which is the core police basic principles of how they should operate, which includes not having political interference in the police department so that they do their job and they're held to account without directly influencing what they're up to. Broken windows, if you understand what that means, simple crimes should be followed up on. When you don't follow up on broken windows, then that becomes nothing, then a kicked-in door, that's not important, and it goes down the scale. The Sanderson report called for a warrant squad. The previous police chief didn't think that was going to be significant, so he didn't have that in the budget. But it's my understanding the current police would love to have a warrant squad right now full-time. And that's important because what it's to do is to hunt the top most wanted criminals on our street. They pose a risk to us, and they pose a risk to our vulnerable people that are on the street that they prey on. So taking the first top 10 off the street, which are on warrants, ready to go back to jail, and we go for the next 10, and work your way down the tree will help start to take some of the pressure off the people on the streets that are creating small crimes to fulfill their habits. Police need our help, but we need proper social supports. If the province doesn't step up, we won't get anywhere. How did the Fairhaven shelter come around? Well, my esteemed colleague's a lawyer. He should know from the zoning bylaw, it wasn't followed legally. And then the province didn't follow the Planning and Development Act legally. And then they didn't follow what a special care home was. And even Chief Arcand himself openly disputed that on television, that he was still continuing to operate as if he was an emergency care home or an emergency shelter as he was downtown. It's just been a game from the start. And unless people can commit, and right now I would put it to my esteemed colleague that he could right now say as a lawyer, yeah, I agree that the zoning bylaw was not properly followed. It was breached. And that the province didn't follow the legislation either, because we're going to keep going down the same path with the same people if we don't establish that rules have been broken. And that's why police are having to intervene. Do you know the fight that it took to get a few trees trimmed in Fairhaven? Took weeks of effort to get the trees trimmed. Even Evan Bray had to talk about it repeatedly on the air. And that's for CEPTED, Community Safety Through Environmental Design. We are way behind the curve.
Thank you. Lastly, to Don.
Well, law and order is a huge issue in the city of Saskatoon. It's going to continue to be for a long time unless things change once again. If you think back just 8 years ago, the big thing was we had what was called the party patrol by the police service that went out in the evenings and quieted down the loud parties that were going on. Today, we have a far more severe problem than we had back then. And one of the things is that people think that the victim now is the criminal, and the criminal's the victim. We've got it all backwards here. Things that we need to do, for example, is we need to get into, again, having police help people on the street. When they see someone at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning with a TV strapped to their back and walking down the back alley, I expect a police officer to stop and ask them if they need some help to take that TV home and where do they live. That's the type of response we need to have. When we see people on the streets and they look like they're in medical distress, we need to stop and ask them if they need help. The idea of driving by and being blind-eyed to the situation has got to stop sooner than later. The men and women of the police service want to fulfill their obligation. It comes from the top down, and we need to have a change once again. When you think of those that are in the North Industrial area and they talk about having their businesses broken into, they're totally frustrated. They don't even call in anymore. They haven't been filling out reports. They haven't been doing anything because they've lost faith in the system. And when you lose faith in the system, you've lost your city. And that's what's transpiring at this particular point in time. We need to have accountability, and accountability is the cornerstone of every organization. City Council needs to ask the Police Commission and the Police Chief, how much money do you actually need to make our city safe once again? We did that in the past, and we can do it in the future for us as well. The excuses of we don't have enough doesn't cut it. On top of it, when they talk about officers per 100,000, the numbers have been decreasing over the last 8 years, not increasing. And it's interesting, as the number per 100,000 decreases, the crime rate increases. We need to do more in those areas. We need to support our officers that are out there today. We need to give them the tools that they require to make our city safe once again. The question is, what makes a safe city? Well, what makes your city safe is when women, children, and seniors can walk on the streets, wander in the parks, and feel safe once again. That's when you have a safe city, and we certainly don't have that at this particular point in time.
Thank you so much for your responses. Now over to Christina.
Oops, she's on mute.
We'll start with Gord.
Thanks very much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for your attention tonight. I think this was good, having all the candidates on stage and talking about the importance of the upcoming election. For me, I've been thinking a lot about what the ballot question is. What question will the people of Saskatoon be asked to answer when it comes to election night? And I think that ballot comes down to one question. Who do you trust to run the city, and who do you trust with your tax dollars? Now, with respect to all my friends on stage, I'm not sure, but I don't know if you want someone who's been there before, someone more of the same, more of the old, someone with no experience, or do you want someone with experience that can bring their talent and bring their extensive experience to the mayor's chair? Now, I have that experience. And we can talk about the challenges that face this city all evening. But I think what the people want is fresh, new leadership. I think a person with vision who sees the great potential in this city, someone with a proven track record of collaboration who can make the tough decisions, and a person that can accept responsibility with humility and with honesty and with integrity. And I'm that person. It's time to clean up, build, and grow Saskatoon. And I humbly request your support in the upcoming mayoralty election.
Thank you, Gordon Wyant. Over to Cynthia Block.
Thanks. I want our city to move forward, not backward. This is an important time, and this election matters. If we want a city that is looking to the future, that is going to be vibrant, resilient, and future ready, if we care about a city that is modern and progressive, that can be affordable, safe, and sustainable in a way that brings people in, I think that's how we need to move forward. No mayor or city council is going to be able to solve the complex issues that we face in our time. but I do believe that together we can. And that's why I'm calling for a mayor's task force on homelessness and community safety. I think it's the real missing link in how we are approaching this escalating issue. And for all of the hard work that all of the service providers and the police and fire and everyone else are doing, we know that community is not at the table. They're not able to hear the conversations, to understand why we can or cannot do certain things. It matters to me that when residents are with us, we have the best chance to achieve. So in closing, I just want to say that we are a city that believes in itself. We are a city that accomplishes great things, especially when other people say that we can't. And one thing I know for sure, we never give up. And so as we go about during this mayoral race and as we go about things into the future, let's keep that in mind. Let's give each other some grace. And I humbly ask you for your support in the upcoming election. Thank you.
Thanks, Cynthia. Over to Cary.
Well, the previous mayor that's going to be leaving soon, Charlie Clark, repeatedly said that he was going to have roundtables on so many subjects, basically a task force. Didn't get anywhere. Meetings are held and held and held. Years have gone by. You need actual solutions for a change. Politicians have an elaborate way of saying things, and I'm not a great politician, I guess, at times, because I'm a pretty frank farm kid at times. So let's just take this morning as a sign of what's coming. This morning on the radio, Mayor Clark was talking with Evan Bray, and they were talking about the deed, and they talked about how they could take a flat piece of land that only had $80,000 worth of tax revenue, but it'll get improved to this big building, and it'll be generating $3 million, and all that growth for education, library, and tax will go then to the deed, how good that'll be. And Mr. Bray asked the question, well, what about all the requirements for this whole area, which is now going to be from Avenue D to the river and 25th Street to 19th Street? That entire area, all that growth will not go to the extra services needed. So you can imagine snow removal on a game night with the BRT. They will be cleaning snow so many more times than normal, but all that extra cost will be borne by the taxpayer of Saskatoon. And Mayor Clark confirmed that. If you go to the 9 o'clock stamp and listen to his interview, you will hear him say it. Yes, there will be other implications for everybody in the city to be bearing this cost on this so-called $1.22 billion white elephant in some regards. That could go to $1.5 billion if you go by plus or minus 20%. We need, honestly, and we're not getting it. I get mad, I understand that, but I've been trying really hard to drive through these facts. Pay attention, go listen for yourself. Mayor Clark says it himself in his own words. Thank you.
Thanks, Cary. Over to Don.
Thank you. Well, yes, we can, and yes, we will. We've got things done before, and we'll do them again. When you think about Circle Drive South Bridge, the traffic bridge, the Mistawassa Bridge, River Landing, all projects that people said not possible to do, can happen, and we did them. The reason is because you have to think positive and you have to be able to move ahead. I do get discouraged along the way, though, when I hear so many things. For example, investing money in wants, not actual needs. That's what we need to do, is get back to priorities once again. I look at, for example, bike lanes. Do we really need bike lanes on Avenue C and Miller Avenue at this point in time? Don't you think we should get our house in order first of all? When we had to borrow $20 million last year to pay for snow removal because we spent money previously on wants and not needs. I look at bus rapid transit. Boy, now called Link, because it isn't bus rapid transit in any way at all. And the price of that continues to escalate along the way. They haven't even included at this particular point in time the operating side of it. Do I believe in transit? Yes. I believe in frequent transit service instead. That's what we should be aiming for at this particular point in time. The deed downtown, boy, that started at about $379 million. The rink now in Calgary is going to be at $979 million if they include all the environmental things like they say they should do in Saskatoon. I believe what we need to do in the end is move forward with positive leadership once again. I can provide that. We've done it in the past. We'll do it in the future. And I'm asking your support on November the 13th to vote for Don Atchison to have progress here and help us out with what we call the homeless dilemma that we have in our community. We'll help to get that resolved, not finished, not finalized, but we'll certainly be moving in the right direction without having to do more studies. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for your closing remarks. Now it's time for a quick wrap up. I would like to thank my co-moderators Lenore, Madhurjo, Rashid, and Christina for your thoughtful questions. And I would like to thank our candidates, Gordon Wyant, Cynthia Block, Cary Tarasoff, and Don Atchison for your time and responses. We would like to thank our host partner, Rogers Communications, especially Eric and Dean. And we want to thank you, the hundreds of viewers watching us live tonight. This evening has provided us with some valuable insights on how you plan to lead Saskatoon in the future.
Yeah, and we just want to encourage, everyone to stay engaged, audience members. This show will be it'll be available. It's going to be recorded. You can play it over, share it with all your friends, share it far and wide. There's lots to be learned from this. You can get it through the Voice of Saskatoon Facebook page, Civically Speaking, and on YouTube. We'll make it available. There's going to be further forums, too, in this community. Watch for them. NSBA, the Chamber, and other ones we think that will be popping up as well. And you can follow all the local media. And just a tip of the hat to the local media, because without local media, we can't be doing these kinds of things. It's so important. So follow them. Make sure the most important thing, November 13th, it's your vote that matters. It matters in terms of who becomes our next leadership in terms of the mayor and the council. So exercise that democratic muscle of yours. And together, we say, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we're not very coordinated here, but thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much.